Hello, good evening, everybody. We are here with three beautiful panelists, and we are about to talk about our recent compilation called MOOLAH, The Stories of Money. The stories of money which appear in every life, and they change from people to people, person to person, perception to perception. I was just talking to the panelists before we went live that every half a generation, the treatment of things and materials and whether they are tangible or intangible keeps changing, and so we will bring up some such experiences which may or may not coincide with what it is today, but it will be a nostalgia, a memory nevertheless. Moolah, the compilation is available for download on Amazon right now across geographies. This contains beautiful short stories from different aspects of money and also the interviews of 10 very, very accomplished authors on, again, different aspects of money. And they will give you an overview of how different the same topic can be when it travels across different mouths, different brains. Welcome to the show. We have Anurag Tripathi, who is an author, an erstwhile investment banker, and he also is the chair for MOOLAH, the Money Stories. Very warm welcome to you, Anurag.
Thanks, Kurul.
We have Chandra, Sundeep, and Lahari Mahalanabish, who are contributing authors to this compilation, and their stories are beautiful, very unlikely, very unpredictable, which we will be talking about in this session right away. To begin the session, thank you so much. To begin the session, let me start with something which is interesting and funny. I would like to ask everybody in the panel, one by one, that what are your money stories from your childhood? What are the things that you remember which may have changed or something that had touched your mind and you still remember that particular incident which has something to do with money? Anurag, if with your permission, if I may start with you.
So I think I was 4 or 5 years old, and I they just bought me one of those Tobu tricycles, and my granddad actually asked me to give him a lift, and he pretended to sit behind me, and I was given a 100 rupee note, a crisp note, as described in The Value of Nothing by Chandra. And I felt that note, and then it was taken away from me by my mother, who went and shopped. I think a clock was bought, which was in my house for a good 10, 15 years post that event. So I have a photograph of uh, him sitting on that cycle with me, pretending to sit on that cycle with me, and that 100 rupee note in my hand. And that stuck with me for a long time.
Lovely. Chandra, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Our family, we were like a typical middle class in a family where, as children, you don't really understand where the money is coming from, or how it is even being spent. But still, the parents would, go out of their way to provide you with everything. I think me and my sibling, we were about 12 or 13 years old when we started feeling that, money is a big factor in our life and everybody else's. So we came up with this idea of, that we'll be ironing our clothes henceforth. So instead of paying the iron wala, you start paying us. We want to have our own pocket money. All our friends have, but you don't give us anything. So we decided to earn pocket money. It hardly lasted a month because by the end of it, there were two shirts burnt beyond identification. That was the end of our earning days. So that's my biggest memory of childhood with money.
So lovely. Lahari, yours, please.
Yeah, when I was around 3, 4 years old, I had a piggy bank. Generally, piggy banks are made of plastic, but mine was made of clay and it was shaped like a fish. There was a small slit through which I had to put in the money. Since it was made of clay, it broke easily. And I remember crying so much that my piggy bank has got broken before I wanted to break it. That is one memory.
Oh,
And another interesting memory I have is that we have a cabinet. It is full of full of vessels, nice bowls, nice looking plates and spoons, which belonged to my grandmother. And I was under there are also some nice knives and cutlery. So I was under the idea when I was small that those were very expensive. And I used to go around telling everyone, how much this costs? This costs 2 lakh rupees, the cutleries and all those pots and pans. Somehow I got those. Somehow I got the idea that they were very expensive. I don't know how.
Actually, I'll tell you one memory which is related to books. In Calcutta, I grew up there. In Calcutta, there's a huge book fair, and I was given a little bit of money to look at the catalog. In magazines, they carried the catalogs that which shop will have which books and stuff. So I was given a very small budget and asked to see the catalog and figure out which book I can have. I cannot have all. So in school, we would have our friends. So friends would sit together and we will jot down that, okay, you buy that, you buy that. I would pass on the more expensive ones to my friends, saying that I'm not that fond, so you buy that, because actually I was more interested in volumes than the quantity, I guess. So I passed on that, and at the end, we always made sure that 2 rupees was saved because there was a thela of ice cream, and ice creams would be available for 2 rupees. We saved those 2 rupees from the budget. So thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing these really beautiful anecdotes. Before I go to Anurag about his, general feedback about after reading the stories that we had sent him, I would like Chandra and Lahari, one by one, if you could just introduce your stories without giving away the real plot. If you could just introduce your stories to the audience so they know what we will be talking about. Chandra?
Okay, all right. So, my story is set in a typical Indian middle class family, wherein my protagonist is like countless other housewives whose daily struggles are far very different from a woman who's earning her own money. So, this lady that I have drawn is inspired by many women that I personally know of, who indulge in these kind of small acts of taking away money from the supposed household budget without the husband's knowledge. But then, even that 5 rupee, 10 rupee, what they have end of the month with them, it gives them a sense of power. It's empowering them with that. Yes, I have some money to spend on my own. I don't need to explain my spending to anybody. So my protagonist is somebody like this. And slowly over time, she has managed to, have some pocket money with her. And she has dreams associated with the money that she has. But then there are certain events which happen overnight, a political announcement which shatters this dream that she has built, and the money that she has lands up in somebody else's hands. But then he also realizes that what he has is nothing. It has absolutely nothing. So that's the title from which I have derived the value of nothing, because ultimately that pile of cash that she had has zero value.
Absolutely. Lahari, would you like to introduce your story?
Yeah. My story, entitled The Golden Pen, has 3 protagonists. It centers around this lady called Chandni, who is a scientist, and she is actually in a very difficult situation. She has lost her husband recently. She has a kid, and she is drawn to her friend because is in love with her. He wants to marry her. She also likes Bikash, but she is just not in the emotional state to enter into a new relationship. So Bikash moves on, and Bikash finds love again. But Bikash once again cannot be with the woman he loves because there's a problem. So actually, because needs to arrange 25 lakh rupees so that he can free his girlfriend from the clutches of a gangster. And the story is about how Chandni uh, helps Bikash in gathering that amount of money. And there's also another twist at the end. Like Chandni has two motives behind what she is doing, and also there's a depiction of complex emotions. Like Chandni is still grieving over the death of her husband, but she is still attracted towards someone, but then she cannot do anything about that attraction because she is not in the state to remarry. So that is about the story. It's about how Chandni helps Bikash get the money.
Wonderful. Anurag, if you could just tell us a little about your feedback or your thoughts after reading the stories.
So I enjoyed both the stories, The Value of Nothing by Chandra and The Golden Paint by Lahari. Um it's extremely difficult to write short stories. Uh, you know, I write novels, but to somehow uh, put an entire story, the beginning and the closure, in 2,000, 2,500 words, it's a very challenging task, and both the writers have been up to it. I really enjoyed both the stories. I enjoyed the descriptions of the characters. Um, they were very well described. They were very visual. Um, the environment was very well described, and to be able to bring out such twists and such emotions in a short, 3 pages. Both the writers did a very good job. Uh, at some places, I felt that I was led in a particular direction, or there were details given in the story about the character, which I thought will play a role towards the end of the story, but that was not the case. So, all I want to say is that when you're writing a short story, each and every description, each and every word, each and every line that you put in, that leads to a final conclusion. The conclusion is that all the characters in the story need to come together. And uh, I found at some places that the descriptions uh, were there, which were not necessarily central to the plot of the story. So that's a feedback that goes to both the writers. Uh, Otherwise, it was phenomenal. It was very engaging. Uh, uh, for The Value of Nothing by Chandra, I was just thinking towards the end, instead of dropping the bundle of notes in the dustbin, if it had been given to the beggar instead, I think that would have been more impactful. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the beggar had always seen the temple from outside,
Yeah.
but now she had a reason to go inside the temple. And while you concluded it with the line that uh, uh, she got nothing and she gave nothing, actually, she was giving money which could have been converted by the temple, perhaps not by her. So, uh, and giving this money to the temple, if the priest had probably, despite that, pushed her out because she was an outcast, that would have been a very, very impactful ending for the story. Because the characters did come together, but indirectly. Uh,
Right.
she saw her putting the money inside the dustbin. Instead of that, if the main protagonist had actually given her the money, that would have made a lot of difference. Uh, and Otherwise, uh, I really, really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the story. I
Thank you so
really
much.
enjoyed the descriptions of the characters. Simple story, two characters, but it hit home, and it really came together very well. Uh, as for the golden paint, Larry, I wish there was more about the golden paint in the story. I think the way you have brought out the story, the three characters, the intermingling of the relationships, complex characters, all three of them. But somewhere I felt perhaps a para about going back into the creation of the golden paint, because the golden paint was, a critical element in the story, which brought everything together, and uh, and that's why I felt that perhaps more was required, uh, more insight was required into that aspect, which was perhaps missing in the story. But again, great story, three characters. Uh, I mean, I'm very frankly amazed, Coral, because uh, from my perspective as a novelist, to bring out so much in so little, you need to have a level of, you have to be very, very direct. And I found both the plots engaging, I found characters engaging, and I found the description of the characters and the environment in which the characters were created very enlightening. It was very, very good. So congratulations, both of you. I really enjoyed the stories, both of them. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
such a
much.
detailed and encouraging feedback. It really helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
a
you.
Thank
lot
you.
for the feedback.
Thank you. There are two things that came out from what Anurag said and also from the experiences that both of you shared. And I would like to elaborate on both of them one by one. First is the word count thing that you have pointed out in the short stories. I will ask the two contributors, contributing authors, Chandra and Lahari first, and then come to you, Anurag. Uh, what I want to bring here is something that we often talk about. This word count thing is, trust me, is something that I really hate. But when we do give out these kind of story prompts and we give out these kind of, we plan these kind of writing programs, we have to give a word count because it cannot be that one story is 700 words and another story is 5,000 words. We have to have some kind of uniformity. But personally, I hate the word count thing because I very genuinely believe that we write stories, we don't write word counts, or we don't write words for that matter. So, Chandra and Lahari, one by one, if you could tell me that uh, how limiting do you feel when you are told that it's 200 words, 1500 words, 2000 words, and stop?
To me, actually, I like it when there is a word count because I know that there are certain boundaries I should not cross. I cannot be rambling on and on. So it really helps me to edit the narrative and make it tight and crisp. So if I know it is 3000, I know I cannot go even one word beyond that. So if it's 100 words, it means 100. So that way, I like the concept of word count. It helps me a lot, actually.
Do you manage to limit your imaginations from that perspective?
No, I wouldn't say that it's a limiting factor because suppose if I have to say something, instead of using 50 words to describe a scene, I would rather just, make it crisp in the form of dialogues, do away with she said, he said stuff, and just focus on the content that I want to deliver.
Amazing. Lahari, would you like to tell us your perspective of this word count thing?
Yeah, I while writing this story, actually I felt it was quite difficult to fit in so many things within 2000 words. Uh, and also, if the word count was slightly bigger, slightly greater, then I could have focused a little bit more on some of the areas, like Anurag already suggested, the origin of the golden paint. Uh, but yes, I mean, I knew the word count from the beginning, so I had to keep it in mind. And yeah, it is a different kind of challenge writing within a word count. If there was no word count, it would have been another challenge. So I think both have pros and cons.
Absolutely.
Coral,
Anurag,
I'll ask a
coming,
question.
please do.
So, suppose you had another 1,000 or 2,000 words to write. How would the story have changed? Or would it have changed?
That's
Yeah,
for
in
Lahari.
my case,
Yeah.
yeah, I would have written more about Chandni's husband. like what he was doing in Cairo. So, so that would have been the biggest area of change. And also, I would have mentioned more about Akanksha, like I have just mentioned in one line how she got into that kind of a profession, but I would
Right.
have elaborated more on that.
What about you, Chandra?
I don't think I needed any more words than what I have already used, because I think I had conveyed what I wanted to convey. I wanted to convey Mona's angst, her suppression, her husband's misogynistic views about how wives should be, how he's the controlling guy in the house, and the beggar's sadness, her despair. I don't think I needed any more words.
Okay.
Had there been more, I would have really struggled to put in some unwanted stuff. I don't think I needed any more.
Yeah, because you had two main characters, whereas
Right.
Lahari had three characters which had to be described. That's why she perhaps struggled a bit to do it in the word limit. Uh, yeah, okay. Korol, please.
So, we are discussing economics in money stories. That's interesting. So, Anurag, I wanted to ask you that when we are writing a novel, again, we are given a design, right? That, publication of a novel means 30,000 plus words. If it is less, it is a novella. How do you
Right.
respond to these kind of demarcations, this kind of divisions? And when you write, the almost the same question that I asked Lahari, that given your imagination or the span of the story that you are about to write, is there, do you graph out your stories? Do you put a particular, do you put that 30% of the story will be about this and 20% will be about that? What is your process, if I may say that, which is.
So I tend to write all my novels based on a three-act structure, and I stick to that. Uh, so the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Mhm.
And within that, the beginning, where I'm creating the world and I'm basically describing the characters, that is probably around 40% of the novel. The middle for me would be around 30%, and the ending where you will have the climax will be another 30%. And I usually start with a summary, and based on the summary, then I expand on that. Uh, as far as writing the particular word limit is concerned, there are commercial considerations that play from the side
Exactly.
of the publisher, especially if you are a first time author. Uh, Generally speaking, publishers prefer a word count between 60 to 70,000 words. That translate into a novel of approximately 250 pages. And that's the novel which sells in the market for between 250 to 300 rupees. So, as a first time author, if you are writing a novel, then the possibility, the probability of you being picked up goes up if you write within this range. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule, but generally, I try to keep my novels within 60 to 70,000 words so that they can be finished hopefully in one or two sitting over 3.5, 4 hours. And so that's the broad dynamics that I work with when I think about my characters in my novel.
Amazing. So, I'll come to the second aspect of the discussion that I had been talking about. Uh, for every story, it is not just about the characters. Of course, the character's journey is very important in the story. But what plays a very important peripheral role is the role of environmental factors. And be it Chandra, your story, be it Lahari's story, be it the novels of Anurag that I have also read, uh, a large part, though it is the character that people fall in love with, people fall in love with the characters only when the environmental factors come together in a very beautiful way. So I wanted to ask you that, and this question is for the entire panel. Uh, how did you look at the environment that you are crafting outside your characters, and how do you put them together along with the authors in your stories? Chandra and Lahari, you have your stories in the compilation called MOOLAH, and Anurag, Your Dalal Street is one of my favorites. I'll come to Anurag about his take after I hear from Chandra and Lahari. Chandra, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So, in my story, the environmental factors are basically twofolds. There's an inner turmoil, and which is impacting the main protagonist a lot. But then there's the outer environment, the political decision which has been taken,
Right.
which has, affected her life so much that all her dreams are now shattered. And she realizes that she's again held up with nothing. What she had been saving for 6 months is nothing but paper now. So the external environment has a major impact in my story because it is bringing the characters together, and we see all their lives being impacted by it. So I would say that in my story, both the internal and the external environments are playing a major role here.
Amazing. Lahari, would you please talk about your story?
Yeah, in my story, the three characters are actually in very different environments. Like Akanksha Akanksha feels restricted in the environment of the profession she hates.
Mhm.
So for her, it is going to hotel rooms and indulging in things uh, against her will, where she has no choice. And so for Akanksha, it's a very hostile environment.
Mhm.
And for Bikash, it's like Bikash's environment is that of a struggling artist. Like he paints and then he tries to sell his work. Though in this story, I didn't mention much about how he's struggling to find buyers because that is not. But it is hinted that
Mhm.
he has to go through all that. And Chandni once again is in a completely different environment from Akanksha and Bikash. Chandni's
Mhm.
environment comprises of her home and the lab. In her home, she has her mother and her daughter, and she is a single mother, uh, looking after her daughter, and also she is also working in the lab. And so the environment of the lab and the environment of the home also influences her a lot,
Mhm.
and that also makes her the kind of person she is.
True. Anurag, if you could just talk about how you create the environment and put the story together, the protagonists along with the environment. We would like to have some insights from you, which could be some kind of writing tips for all of us.
So, for me, I think initially I look at the theme. So the environment is what I create first, and the characters come second. It's not the other way around. So when I was writing The Last Street, I wanted to explore, the broader theme of greed, human greed, and money. And I decided to explore it with respect to the stock markets, the capital markets. And the external environment so was the capital markets, and all the characters were created around that. The internal environment at the same time, I wanted to create conflict in the mind of the protagonist, which is the reason the story begins with how the father of the protagonist has had a bad experience in the stock markets, and he's lost a lot of money in the stock markets. And as a result of that, uh, there is conflict, internal conflict between the father and son on one end, and the four friends on the other. And the broader theme is the stock markets and the how money and greed corrupts these four friends who are thick in the beginning of the story, and how it forces them to turn against each other to an extent. And then eventually, how the protagonist comes to realize what is important in his life, and he comes back to his family. So, for me, one needs to explore the characters based on a broad theme. I write plot driven stories, not necessarily character based stories. And since they are plot driven, I think the theme is very, very important. In some cases, more important than the characters themselves. And then I let the characters write their own arc. I don't constrict them in any way. So sometimes the characters take a life of their own, which was not pre-decided by me when I had written the summary. It often happens. In the last street also, one of the friend's character went on a very different tangent than what I had initially imagined when I began writing the story. So yeah, themes are very important for me. Perhaps more important. It comes naturally to me to write plot-based stories, and then themes are important. And that's something that is a personal learning for me as well, to start writing character-based stories where themes become secondary to the characters.
Absolutely.
I have a query here.
Please go ahead.
So, when you say that you majorly work on plot driven stories, the characters are gradually developed on their own. Does this work only when you're working on a novella kind of thing, or would this approach be useful while writing short fiction as well?
I don't think, I think it'll be difficult to write short fiction. Uh, I think they need to be more character based.
Character driven.
Yes,
Right.
character driven. And it works well in a novel. They can be equal weightage, but I think as you bring down the story, I think it will be driven by the character more than the underlying theme. Uh, Also, in case we were planning to expand the story, then
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, again, you have to go back to the character driven stories. It cannot be plot based.
Right,
The
right.
plots begin and end. And that's something that is a to do for me, because if I want to write a sequel, I find myself often struggling because I write plot based rather than character based.
Okay.
Right. So, before we conclude, I would invite all of you to read a small excerpt from your stories one by one. I would come to Anurag at the end.
Right.
Before that, if we could start with Chandra, then go to Lahari, and finally come to Anurag.
Okay.
Do mention the name of your story once again before you go
Sure.
ahead with the excerpt.
Right. My story is titled The Value of Nothing. So I've just taken, I'm just narrating of something from the middle towards the almost end. Uh, I pay attention to the mayhem, and the surrounding despair seeps inside. The treasure in my hands is nothing but a pile of junk. No surprise, I found them in the bin. A rage burns my insides as I climb up the steps, and the fragrance of incense threatens to suffocate me. I laugh out loud. I laugh till tears trickle down my cheek. Now that I'm finally inside, I know there's nothing special about this place. A strange sense of relief, mixed with sadness, rises up in my throat as I drop the worthless pile in the donation box. That's it.
Thank you. Larry, would you please read an excerpt from your story?
Yes, I'm reading from the middle. My story is The Golden Paint. Moonlight spilled on the mosaic floor and lapped at the curved legs of the single bed. The white bedsheet rumpled as Bikash crawled across the bed in a semi-wakeful state to reach for the steel jug on the window sill. After taking a large gulp of water, he turned to his incomplete painting and blinked, dazzled by the glitter. His mouth fell open, his heart raced as he minced towards the shining canvas. With his trembling hands he began to trace the queen's necklace, and it came off. coiling around his finger like a golden string. As he ran his fingers down the surface of the pillars, they stripped off from the canvas, showering the floor with a heap of gold flakes. He rapped on the golden engravings he had painted on the royal furniture, and they slipped off, flecking his arms with gold. That's it.
Thank you so much. Anurag, I would invite you to read a little from Dalal Street.
Yeah. So this is from Dalal Street from the first chapter. It's called Risk Taker to Naysayer. This is the second part of the first chapter. The protagonist is called Varun and his father is Mr. Agarwal. As a background, Mr. Agarwal has lost a lot of money today in the Harshad Mehta scam. Varun had distinct memories of that day, and they always evoked mixed emotions. Children from the neighborhood had gathered at his house to celebrate his 4th birthday. There was a lot of noise and excitement. The pineapple cake looked fresh and delicious, ready to be devoured. Everyone waited anxiously for his father, Mr. Agarwal, to return from work. But the clock ticked away and minutes became hours. The noise and excitement died down. Soon, the children became restless and began leaving for their homes. Mrs. Agarwal, who had also been waiting for her husband and had uneasily watched the children get impatient, decided to salvage whatever was left of the situation. She asked her son to cut the cake, but Varun refused. He would not cut it until his father was there to clap and sing. Another half an hour passed by. The guests all left without eating the cake. The 4-year-old birthday boy waited alone by the front door. By 10:30 p.m., he was exhausted and could no longer keep his eyes open. It was midnight when Mr. Agarwal returned from office. He had had more than a few drinks, and his footsteps were heavy and uneven. He walked into his son's room. Varun was fast asleep. The moonlight fell on his face, highlighting the traces of tears across his cheeks. Mr. Agarwal sat on the bed beside his son and mumbled an apology. "Forgive me, son," he whispered. "It hurts, but I couldn't be with you earlier today. I was too ashamed to look you in the eye. I didn't know what to do." He kissed Varun on the forehead and walked back to the living room. He didn't have the heart to confront his wife. What would he tell her? He had lost it all, gambled their entire life savings on the stock markets. They would have to start all over again. As he lay down on the couch alone that night, he made a promise to himself. Never again was he going to invest a rupee in the stock market. This incident had changed him forever. That morning, he had been a risk taker who always read the pink papers looking for opportunities to invest. A few hours later, he had become a naysayer. The cake was never cut.
Oh, how
Wonderful.
sad.
Actually, for some time, you just don't have words when
Yeah.
this part is read or this part you hear.
So the
So,
book ends with the cake being cut. That's the last line.
yes. Yeah, so that's actually one story which both Chandra and Lahari you will get to read. And we will send across the copy soon.
Oh, great. I'm
Thank you
looking
so
forward
much.
to read it.
Yeah,
Certainly.
thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Anurag, Chandra, and Lahari, for being with us this evening. It really makes a lot of difference for all of us to be discussing writing, to be discussing money as a theme, and
Yes.
writing around it, and many other writing issues that we got to discuss in the last 40 minutes. And to the audience, let me remind that MOOLAH, the compilation of short stories and brilliant interviews on stories of money, are available for download from Amazon. Please do get your copy. Thank you so much, Anurag, Chandra, and Lahari. It
Thank
was
you so
brilliant
much.
being with you.
It was a pleasure being here.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you
much.
so much. It was an honor speaking to all of you.
Our pleasure equally. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.